Hello, and welcome to Mom and Dad MagicBox, the show where we bring together all stakeholders in our children's education. I'm Isaac Carmignani. We thought we'd bring you a special edition today, covering the Google On Air conference as part of our continuing coverage of that conference. We thought we'd bring you the entire discourse of Lord David Puttnam. Lord David Puttnam is a British film producer and educator. He also sits on the benches in the British House of Lords and has a lot of experience in international education. We hope you enjoy that discourse, and then we will bring to you, as part of our continuing coverage of the blooming career of young William Kittisak, his wonderful performance of a Bon Jovi song. And now, Lord David Puttnam.
I am now pleased to introduce Lord Puttnam. Lord Puttnam spent 30 years as an independent, award-winning film producer of such films as Chariots of Fire and The Killing Fields. In 1998, he retired from film production to focus on his work in public policy, particularly in the areas of education and the environment. The same year of his retirement, he stepped forward and created the National Teaching Awards as a way to honor outstanding educators. He was formerly the Chancellor of the Open University, one of the world's largest distance learning institutions, and today he is the digital champion for Ireland, and also the chairman of Atticus Education, that's an online education company. In his talk and Q&A to follow, David will share a few of the many lessons he has learned from his diverse experience as he seeks to connect educators.
Thanks. I'm David Puttnam, and welcome to Ireland on this quite sunny afternoon. Two things cropped up a few minutes ago. One was the notion of focusing your attention. I'm certainly going to need that. The other was listening to Richard Curtis talking about the Millennium Goals, Millennium Development Goals. What he had to say is very important. And in a sense, those two things come together for me. So I'm going to try and rattle through quite a lot of slides and quite a lot of facts. So I need you to bear with me, and then we'll as quickly as possible, get into questions. The first big question I think young people are asking themselves today, we'll cut to the next slide, is just this. Who am I? Who am I? It's a big question. I'll tell you who you are. Governor Jay Inslee, one of the US governors, said not that long ago that you are the first generation to understand what climate change is, but the last generation to actually be able to do anything about it. That's a massive responsibility. So that's our starting point. Next thing, we talked a lot earlier, I was listening to the issue of problem solving. So here's the next slide, which is about exactly that. This must seem to you to be enormously obvious. The first step in solving a problem is recognizing there is one. It should be obvious. Believe me, many of us go through life understanding problems, but not really recognizing that they're there staring us in the face. Here for me in education is what the big problem is. It's on the next slide. 96% of college principals believe their institutions are successfully preparing young people for the world of work, but only 14% of recent college graduates agree with that, and less than 12% of business leaders think that what's being delivered is the type of young person that they need to build their businesses and indeed to build their careers. That's not a gap, that's a gulf. That's a vast gulf that we've got to start closing. Because if the gap between those who believe themselves to be doing the educating and those who believe themselves to be educated is that wide, we're clearly doing something wrong. And yet, here's the good news on the next slide. David Brooks recently in the New York Times made the point that the economic rewards for improved education are at historic highs. Americans with a 4-year college degree make 98% more than those without one. So the rewards for education have never, ever been more obvious. But I'm not absolutely convinced that we in the West fully appreciate that. And here's a slide that establishes, I think, the way I look into the world. I spend a lot of time in Asia. I'm the UK's envoy to Southeast Asia. What I see in Asia is an absolute acceptance and understanding of the importance of education. I think we in the West still haven't entirely got our heads around the fact of what we need to be doing and the way in which we need to be going about it. So what's the question you are asking, of what should we as educators be doing for you? Here's a nice way of seeing it. I think that many young people today are looking at a world without a map. And it's our job to start drawing that map for them. Start creating a world that they can understand better. Here's that slide. Whoops, there we are. So that map, when we've got this on an animation, unfortunately I can't show the animation. That map actually comes together in the animated version. So I think the world is a difficult place. And as I say, the role of the educators is to pull that map together. We're very lucky. We've got a tool and it's been handed to us. Smack the next slide on and it's digital. The digital world offers us enormous opportunities. You've been listening to those most of the afternoon and morning. But the opportunities are boundless. There's a very important New York journalist, Tom Friedman. I think he, in this slide, put this beautifully. Can we have the next one up? Very big thing happened in the last decade. The world moved from connected to hyperconnected. That's a big claim, but it's a very important one. And what's most interesting is it is teachers who are connecting with other teachers. How about these for some facts? I chair the board of the Times Educational Supplement, and we've got, I think, the world's largest connected community of professionals, and they are teachers. How about these for some stats? There we go. 1 million downloads in a single day. These are actually a couple of months out of date. Just look, these are teachers talking to teachers and getting ideas and lesson plans from teachers absolutely daily, and it's growing exponentially. So the idea that teaching has allowed itself to get caught in some world of the past just isn't true. The best teachers are using the best technology to constantly improve their work. Next slide, I think, shows just this. This is not just a theory. This is actually a teacher-led digital revolution. That's a big phrase, right? A teacher-led digital revolution. But it's way, way, way overdue, and I'll try and prove it to you. Here's the next slide. This is 1915. This man in the foreground was the most famous surgeon in the world in 1915. He saved thousands of lives during the First World War and was a remarkable guy. Now look 100 years later. Here's an operating theatre this year. See how it's changed. Come here. There we go. That surgeon you just saw, that genius, would not be able to do anything today in that operating theatre. He literally would stand there gazing at it. Maybe he could make a cup of tea, scratch himself. He'd be on a different planet, literally a different planet. Now, how is it that those extraordinary developments have taken place in 100 years in the world of the medical world, the world of medicine, and yet it is absolutely true to say that, and I'll show the next slide, that in the world of teaching and learning, up until very, very recently, a really good teacher during the 20th century could have taught almost any lesson to her class. And that transition that took place in the world of medicine just didn't take place in the world of education. So in a sense, we allowed ourselves to get behind the 8 ball. Now, today I think is Teacher Appreciation Day. So let me make one thing very, very clear. Here's a profound truth on this slide. Any country that fails to value its teachers fails to value its future. Many, many countries in the world, I think, realize that. But it's equally true to say that there are countries that haven't really managed as yet to get their heads around it. I mentioned that I spend a lot of time in Asia, and I do. Here's an example of what's happening in China, which I think is kind of important. 30% of classroom teachers' time in Shanghai is spent preparing for the next lesson and improving their professional development. The equivalent figure in the UK is around about 5% or less. 5% is regarded as quite a lot. So what do we think we know that teachers can prepare themselves and improve their professional skills in a very, very short amount of time that the Chinese feel requires 30% of their time? I know who, frankly, I will place a bet on, and it will not be the British experience. I'm not sure what the American equivalent is, but I doubt very much it's anything approaching the Chinese belief that you require 30% of non-contact time to improve yourself as a teacher. So there's another reason why I think the commitment that I'm seeing in Asia is so overwhelming and something that we should definitely take on board. And this is on another slide. Here we go. Parental engagement, and let's call it self-sacrifice. Up to 30% of disposable family income in Asia is spent on their children's education. Now, there's a very interesting reason. The reason really is is there are very few pension arrangements in that part of the world. People do not have pensions. Their child effectively is their pension. So that investment in the child's future is in effect an investment in themselves and the stability of their families. It's a very, very important issue. And a wonderful American thinker, economist, sociologist as well in a way, Joseph Stiglitz, recently said this. He said, it's boilerplate economics that universal education is the path to prosperity. It's a global public good. I think that's one of the things that Richard Curtis was alluding to when he talked about the Millennium Development Goals. Without education, we will never, ever meet the goals that we've set ourselves for the world's young people. I was president of UNICEF for 7 very, very happy years, and I'm still a UNICEF ambassador. I think I know better than most what the difference is between well-educated, particularly girls, well-educated girls, for example, in Africa, or adequately educated girls in South Africa, and people who've missed out entirely on education. It's a fundamental. So I'm sitting here talking to you. This is actually what I'm looking at. I teach in 6 universities around the world, will be next year, from here. This is my office. It's my studio, if you like. I can see you. I've got a board showing me, a screen showing me the content that I'm about to show. I've got a screen above that, which is an Apple TV, just gives me notes, which is kind of handy. And I love working from here. We do 2-hour seminars on a very regular basis. Our students seem to love it. And if they're loving it as much as I am, then I'm the happiest man in Christendom. So what's my role? I have to work and enjoy working with the faculties. I rely tremendously on the faculties I work with. My job really is to try to inspire rather than assess what's going on. I'm a former filmmaker. I do understand film. I do understand visual communication. I think I can pass on a lot that's useful to the next generation of aspiring filmmakers or just bloggers, whatever it might be. But my job is to inspire and break down barriers for them. It's then the faculty's job, the people I work with, to do the rest of it. What do I teach? I teach creativity. I teach belief in creativity. This slide, I hope, explains this. Again, in a perfect world, this would animate and the muscle would move up and down. Creativity, I believe, is a muscle. Some people believe that creativity is a facet of genius. I would reject that. There are geniuses, they're few and far between. I think we are all potentially creative, but there are a number of components that go into creativity: focus, collaboration, tenacity, imagination, and most of all, I argue, resilience. If you're not resilient, you're always going to be suboptimal. You will not deal with the problems that you set yourself, let alone the problems that other people set you. So I try to teach the power and importance of resilience. I was very lucky. As a very young man, I worked for a massively demanding taskmaster. He was the creative director of an ad agency that I worked at. And this is what he said to me on this slide. He just said to me, your job, my job, is to amaze me. He said, just go away and amaze me. No excuses. That's a very tough call. I remember going back to my little cubbyhole of an office and I think probably crying my eyes out. But I must have done okay because I survived that job. I moved on into the movie industry and I've done well. I've had a very, very happy life. But the idea of having a role and having someone who actually says to you, come on, your job's to amaze me, was a very, very powerful stimulant to my early career. I teach a number of creative laws, if you like. And the first and most important law is this. I call this Puttnam's first law. That which is merely competent or even good is only a point of departure. It's seldom, if ever, a point of arrival. We're now living in a world in which average has gone. When I was young, if you did an average job for an average company, an average kind of business, you could live an average lifestyle. That, for good or ill, has been removed from us. Today, you are required to be excellent. And therefore, my, as it were, first law is set yourself the task of being excellent. You'll also find that the jobs themselves are far, far more satisfying if you are able to achieve a level of excellence that excites you. Next thing I teach is collaboration. Again, I think there's a nice slide that says it all. This slide gets tweeted a lot, so I know it must work. Remember that the person you're sitting next to could easily change your life. The guys I started with are all extraordinarily successful. Alan Parker, the film director, I shared an office with when I was 23. Ridley Scott I worked with. A man called Charles Saatchi at one point ran the largest advertising agency in the world. We all worked together and we encouraged each other. We competed like crazy. But we did know that within that room were people we were going to kind of know for the rest of our lives that it was good to get on with, but maybe even good to encourage to bring out the best in them. So just remember, the person you're sitting next to could easily, very easily, change your life. A couple of other small things. I'm a child of the 60s. The 60s was very good to me. It was a very powerful time of change, a very exciting time of change. And this slide is a quote by a wonderful civil rights leader, Eldridge Cleaver. And he said, you're either part of the solution or you're going to be part of the problem. I want to believe that everyone I'm talking to this afternoon my time, desperately wants to be part of the solution. You do not want to be left behind as part of the problem. And that stayed with me. I pinned that on my wall, and I had it on my wall for years and years and years. Cleaver was right. There is an opportunity to be part of the future and part of the solution, and you don't want to be left behind. A couple of other tiny things. The Chinese president the other day said this, a very neat little slide. We're not going to dress up other people's yesterdays as our own tomorrows. What he was saying was that the world had to stop looking west to the United States for all of its examples of what it wanted or where it was going. That we all had to construct our own futures. There was no one model, no as it were, cookie cutter, one size fits all model of development, or one size fits all model of what a democracy should look like. We're going to have to create our own futures. And I thought it's very wise of the Chinese president to make that point. It's an important point, and it's certainly one that's driving a lot of places in the world. 3 other slides. Barack Obama, not very long ago, made this very important point, that the hardest thing in politics, certainly within a democracy, is to deal with things which are in the long term, and where the price we pay for inaction is decades away. Now, obviously, it's true of climate change. I happen to believe it's true of suboptimal levels of education. We have to, all of us, as taxpayers, as citizens, have to understand that our futures are utterly reliant on the quality of the education we're able to offer. Now, from the point of view of lawmakers, policymakers, I've worked in Parliament for the last 18 years. I do know about this stuff. There are extraordinary numbers of competing priorities. This is, in a sense, on the last slide. These priorities are very evident. At the top of them, I've put education. But believe me, around any cabinet table, any group of politicians, there are going to be people arguing for defense, for energy security, for social security, for health, for infrastructure. I just want to ask them this. You tell me which of the fundamental components that go to make a civil society can self-fund without a brilliant system of education. Our pensions require a highly educated group of people putting money in. Our defense requires that. Our social security requires that. All of these elements, our health services certainly, all these elements require that we are a highly educated, highly motivated, and actually rather highly ambitious society. Without that, I wouldn't want to leave you, young people, with an impression that somehow life's going to be easy. It isn't. You're going to inherit problems far greater than I think my generation did. You're also going to inherit opportunities far greater than my generation did. It's your decision, and it's your education that will decide whether you win that battle or face the consequences of losing it. Thanks very much for listening to me, and I'm very happy to answer any questions you want to hurl at me. Thank you.
Lord Puttnam, thank you. You made a number of so many important points. In fact, I think you'll probably have a flood of prospective students trying to register for your classes to hear a lot more. I particularly liked what you said about the importance of valuing the teachers, because that is so critical. All right, well, earlier today, you highlighted this as well during your talk. Filmmaker Richard Curtis called for schools to become engaged in the UN sustainability goals. I know you're passionate about a number of issues, including climate change. How do you think schools can get students engaged in these important topics?
Well, I think the big thing with climate change is just look at the science, and then look at the phony science. I mean, the anti-climate change people done a pretty good job of, rather like the cigarette people did for many, many years, of kind of throwing a curve and saying, well, maybe it isn't true. And that's, we're all vulnerable to that. If someone could show me tomorrow that my fears about climate change are ill-founded, I'd be hugely relieved. I sleep better tonight. So I'm a soft target for someone who can come up with fake science and try to tell me there isn't a problem. However, I took through Parliament the world's first climate change bill. I'm very proud of that. I've studied the science. I've talked to hundreds of scientists. I know this is a reality of all our lives. I know that any young people under the age of, let's say, 30, it will probably dominate aspects of their lives towards, in the latter part of their lives. I think that what teachers have got to do is say, look, find out for yourself, but look at the science. Don't look at the pseudoscience, look at the science. And a really good example, if you want to go back, is just look at how many hundreds of thousands of people died because cigarette manufacturers, for a period of 30 years, denied the science of a relationship between smoking and lung cancer. People wanted to believe it. People like smoking. Smoking's a habit. If someone will tell you there isn't a causal relationship, you're going to believe them. The truth is, hundreds of thousands of people died because the manufacturers of cigarettes flat out lied. Our job as teachers is to, in a sense, expose that lie for what it is. That it's dangerous, it's immoral, and at its very least, it's undemocratic.
Lord Puttnam, thank you. It is a pleasure to have you here. You have given us so much inspiration and also a real charge to go out there and collaborate and innovate in the classrooms. Thank you so much for your time.
It's a great, great pleasure. Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you, Lord Puttnam. That was very informative and very enjoyable. And now we would like to focus on our app of the week, which is Quizlet. Quizlet is used by many teachers. Students enjoy it. It is a tool for building flashcards for the purpose of study. You can pretty much find any subject that your child has in Quizlet. For our Museum of the Week, we would like to bring to you the Intrepid. Not enough good things can be said about the Intrepid, from a space shuttle to World War II aircraft to an SR-71 Blackbird spy plane. It's a wonderful place to go. It's inexpensive and easily accessible on the west side of Manhattan, the Intrepid. And for our Performance of the Week, we would like to bring you William Kittisak. We have featured him before. We are following his career closely, and now he is singing for us to guitar accompaniment a Bon Jovi song. We hope you enjoy it.